Hi, everyone. It's Legal Talk Tuesdays. This is Laura and Brooke. So we like to talk at the same time sometimes. We are going to talk today. We're still talking about children. This February is our month of children. And today we're going to talk about my favorite thing to do when it comes to children, which is talk about adoption and guardianship. A lot of people kind of think they're the same thing or not sure what the differences are between the two. So today we're going to talk mostly about kind of an overview of what adoption is and what guardianship is, so you know what the difference is. You know, so that you can kind of see if you are the parent of the child or if you are the family member or the person who is trying to adopt or get guardianship, kind of what your challenges are, what the legal ramifications are, and things like that, so that you can get
and what exactly your goal is.
Exactly.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't know whether you need to be doing an adoption or doing a guardianship.
Exactly.
And what that means.
Yeah, and we like to help the Google crowd, because we're just kind of a world where we like to Google everything. So you might be Googling adoption when you actually need a guardianship or vice versa. So first we're going to do kind of an overview of adoption. And again, like I said in the beginning, this is one of my favorite things to do because I have a soft spot in my heart for children and making sure that they're taken care of. I don't have any of my own, so I like to make sure the world is taken care of. So I love doing adoptions. Adoptions, very specifically, there are a couple of different kinds, but the biggest thing that you need to know is what adoption means. And that is that it means the rights of the biological parent terminate. So they're gone. Mm-hmm. And the person who is adopting, or the people who are adopting, they are adopting that child, that minor, as their own, just like they gave birth to them. So that's something that not everybody is aware of. Right. That is your child, just like you gave birth to them. There are a few different types of adoption that we deal with. There are obviously a lot of different types of adoption, but ones that we deal with more on a more regular basis here at MVL are step-parent adoptions. So you have maybe the mother who's gotten remarried, the biological father of the child has not been in the picture for a while, maybe hasn't been paying child support or visiting the children, and the stepfather wants to adopt.
Or even if they consent, sometimes it's consensual.
Exactly. Oftentimes it can be, because then that biological father doesn't have to pay child support anymore. So that's something that's
not great. But yes,
it's not great, but
it happens.
But it does lead to them consenting a lot of times to give up their parental rights and have someone else be financially responsible for the child. Right. So a step-parent adoption is something that we do quite a lot here at MyVirtual.Lawyer, and then we also do a lot of grandparent adoptions. Mm-hmm. We're just in a world of drugs too. I keep saying a world of, but unfortunately there are a lot of people who might be addicted to drugs, or it's possible that your child is deceased and you want to adopt your child's child, which is your grandchild or your grandchildren. It's a more permanent solution than guardianship, and it's a lot easier, to be honest, in the long run. Let's say that your child is deceased and you want to adopt, maybe they're 3 years old, or maybe they're a baby, maybe they're 10, but it's a lot more permanent solution, and it's a lot easier going forward because you are legally responsible for them just like they were your child. So it doesn't require as much paperwork and as much red tape as a guardianship does, because what you're doing is you're saying, I will be responsible for this child for the rest of their life, pretty much, but especially while they're a minor until they turn 18.
And we're coming at this from a perspective of our firm. So most of the people that we are going to assist are going to be people who either have someone who's not going to fight it, or they have someone who has consented to it most of the time. And so sometimes it can be a little bit more complicated and not exactly what we're talking about if there are, factors, other family members from the other side, other people at play. So we're just talking on a very high level, very generally, this is what you can expect with adoption, and this is what you can expect for guardianship.
Exactly. Adoptions that are, for children with maybe in the system with DHS, or that it's private adoptions, those are things that are definitely, it's basically along the same lines. It's the same legal track that you would have to follow. But with MyVirtual.Lawyer, we tend to do more of the family member adoptions.
Right.
Then we do those private adoptions where you are a third party that's not related to the child, and then you're kind of going out and adopting that child from a private person or from the system.
That tends to be a little bit more complicated.
It does, yeah. So adoption, just keep in mind, the biggest thing to remember is that the parental rights are terminated for that biological parent. If that's if the mother is still retaining those rights and a stepfather is adopting, it's just the biological father that their rights will be terminated, and that's permanent. So they are no longer the father of that child according to the law. So the rights are terminated, and remember that when you're doing an adoption, you are that child's parent. So you have all the rights and responsibilities and love and support that you would, just the same as if you gave birth to that child, if you were the mom, or that you fathered the child if you're the father.
Right. And so it's a little bit different than guardianship. And a lot of times people don't understand the two. I know people sometimes have issues, especially if they're a parent and they have maybe their parent that's the grandparent that wants to do a guardianship because maybe, you know, there's a situation that's come up where it's necessary, and they think, well, I'm going to lose all my rights. That's where adoption, one way that adoption and guardianship is different, in that in guardianship, the parental rights are not terminated. It can be an emergency situation. It can be like she spoke about earlier, you know, sometimes there's a drug issue, there's maybe a domestic violence issue, there are, you know, other issues at play, and the person who wants to petition for guardianship needs to get that child out of that situation. And so you can do that on an emergency basis. Most guardianships, not all, start with a temporary order. And then even if they end in a permanent, there's still maintenance that you have to do. So it's a little bit more work if you're doing a guardianship, because you're going to have to do yearly reporting to the court to maintain your guardianship status. So that's one thing you have to think about if you're becoming a guardian. You do have the ability to do things on behalf of the child. So even though you're not technically the parent's rights have not been terminated, you still have the ability to go do things you need to do, like enroll them in school, and put them on your insurance. Typically, most insurances, that's what they're going to need, is something that you have some kind of custody and control of that minor child. So you're able to do some of those things without totally cutting out the biological parents. So that could be a good option for you if that's your goal. The parental rights, like she said, are terminated in adoption. If you think about it this way, and especially if you're having this conversation, it's a hard conversation. If you're maybe a parent, you're having this conversation with your child because you're going to be the guardian of their child, it's a good way to kind of present it to them that it's more of a custody situation, more that you have the physical care and control and the ability to make decisions for that child. Another thing too with guardianship is, if it's something you desire and if you're in that situation, you can ask the court to have the parent pay some support to assist you. And you can also get them on state benefits. So that's another benefit of a guardianship. So that's kind of an overall view of adoption versus guardianship. There's a lot more to it. These are not necessarily Arkansas specific things. So we'll later on address these things in much more detail, because we'd be here all day if we were trying to talk to you about the intricacies of adoption and guardianship. But keeping on kind of this path of, you know, February being all about children, this week we wanted to talk about adoption because it's Valentine's and Laura loves adoptions.
I do. I love helping children.
Right. So, but next week we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about Arkansas laws on child custody and visitation. So we are here every Tuesday at 11:30 Central Time. So join us next Tuesday. And if you have any questions in the interim, feel free to ask them. Shoot us a message or email us. Or
exactly. And we see here a couple people have commented, and we see somebody has obtained guardianship recently. So happy that you were able to do that. We just, you know, we love to help people kind of take care of it, whether it's a temporary situation or a permanent situation. We love to have people help take care of children. And these are two, you know, similar but pretty different paths that you can take. And we'll talk a little bit more next week about kind of what the differences in custody and visitation are when you are the biological parent and you're working through things with your children there. So.
All right. So see you next week. Thanks, guys.